Introductions. I was 2 days old the first time I met Augie Pullman. I don't remember the occasion myself, obviously, but my mom told me about it. She and Dad had just brought me home from the hospital for the first time, and Augie's parents had just brought him home from the hospital for the first time, too. But Augie was already 3 months old by then. He had to stay in the hospital because he needed some surgeries that would allow him to breathe and swallow. Breathing and swallowing are things most of us don't ever think about because we do them automatically. But they weren't automatic for Augie when he was born. My parents took me over to Augie's house so we could meet each other. Augie was hooked up to a lot of medical equipment in their living room. My mom picked me up and brought me face to face with Augie. August Matthew Pullman, she said, this is Christopher Angus Blake, your new oldest friend. And our parents applauded and toasted the happy occasion. My mom and Augie's mom, Isabel, became best friends before we were born. They met at the supermarket on Amesport Avenue right after my parents moved to the neighborhood. Since both of them were having babies soon and they lived across the street from each other, Mom and Isabel decided to form a mother's group. A mother's group is when a bunch of moms hang out together and have playdates with other kids' moms. There were about 6 or 7 other moms in the mother's group at first. They hung out together a couple of times before any of the babies were born. But after Augie was born, only 2 other moms stayed in the mother's group. Zachary's mom and Alex's mom. I don't know what happened to the other moms in the group. Those first couple of years, the 4 moms in the mother's group, along with us babies, hung out together almost every day. The moms would go jogging through the park with us in our strollers. They would take long walks along the riverfront with us in our baby slings. They would have lunch at the Heights Lounge with us in our baby chairs. The only times Augie and his mom didn't hang out with the mother's group was when Augie was back in the hospital. He needed a lot of operations because just like with breathing and swallowing, there were other things that didn't come automatically to him. For instance, he couldn't eat, he couldn't talk, he couldn't really even close his mouth all the way. These were things that the doctors had to operate on him so that he could do them. But even after the surgeries, Augie never really ate or talked or closed his mouth all the way like me and Zach and Alex did. Even after the surgeries, Augie was very different from us. I don't think I really understood how different Augie was from everyone else until I was 4 years old. It was wintertime, and Augie and I were wrapped in our parkas and scarves while we played outside in the playground. At one point, we climbed up the ladder to the ramp at the top of the jungle gym and waited in line to go down the tall slide. When we were almost next, the little girl in front of us got cold feet about going down the tall slide, so she turned around to let us pass. That's when she saw Augie. Her eyes opened really wide and her jaw dropped down and she started screaming and crying hysterically. She was so upset she couldn't even climb down the ladder. Her mom had to climb up the ramp to get her. Then Augie started to cry because he knew the girl was crying because of him. He covered his face with his scarf so nobody would see him. And then his mom had to climb up the ramp to get him too. I don't remember all the details, but I remember there was a big commotion. A little crowd had formed around the slide. People were whispering. I remember us leaving the playground very quickly. I remember seeing tears in Isabel's eyes as she carried Augie home. That was the first time I realized how different Augie was from the rest of us. It wasn't the last time, though. Like breathing and swallowing, crying comes automatically to most kids, too. 7:08 a.m. I don't know why I was thinking about Augie this morning. It's been 3 years since we moved away, and I haven't even seen him since his bowling party in October. Maybe I'd had a dream about him, I don't know, but I was thinking about him when Mom came into my room a few minutes after I turned off my alarm clock. You awake, sweetie? She said softly. I pulled my pillow over my head as an answer. Time to wake up, Chris, she said cheerfully, opening the curtains of my window. Even under my pillow with my eyes closed, I could tell my room was way too bright now. Close the curtains, I mumbled. Looks like it's gonna rain all day today, she sighed, not closing the curtains. Come on, you don't want to be late again today, and you have to take a shower this morning. I took a shower like 2 days ago. Exactly. Ugh, I groaned. Let's go, honey boy, she said, patting the top of my pillow. I pulled the pillow off my face. Okay, I yelled. I'm up. Are you happy? You're such a grump in the morning, she said, shaking her head. What happened to my sweet 4th grader from last year? Lisa, I answered. She hated when I called her by her first name. I thought she'd leave my room then, but she started picking some clothes off my floor and putting them in my hamper. Did something happen last night, by the way, I said, my eyes still closed. I heard you on the phone with Isabel when I was going to sleep last night. It sounded like something bad. She sat down on the edge of my bed. I rubbed my eyes awake. What? What? I said, is it really bad? I think I had a dream about Auggie last night. No, Augie's fine, she answered, scrunching up her face a bit. She pushed some hair out of my eyes. I was going to wait till later to... What? I interrupted. I'm afraid Daisy died last night, sweetie. What? I'm sorry, honey. Daisy! I covered my face with my hands. I'm sorry, sweetie. I know how much you loved Daisy. Darth Daisy. I remember the day Augie's dad brought Daisy home for the first time. Augie and I were playing trouble in his room when all of a sudden we heard high-pitched squealing coming from the front door. It was Via, Augie's big sister. We could also hear Isabel and Lourdes, my babysitter, talking excitedly, so we ran downstairs to see what the commotion was about. Nate, Augie's dad, was sitting on one of the kitchen chairs holding a squirming, crazy yellow dog in his lap. Via was kneeling down in front of the dog trying to pet it, but the dog was kind of hyper and kept trying to lick her hand, which Via kept pulling away. A dog! Augie screamed excitedly, running over to his dad. I ran over too, but Lourdes grabbed me by the arm. Oh no, puppy, she said to me. She had just started babysitting me in those days, so I didn't know her very well. I remember she used to put baby powder in my sneakers, which I still do now because it reminds me of her. Isabel's hands were on the sides of her face. It was obvious that Nate had just come through the door. I can't believe you did this, Nate, she was saying over and over again. She was standing on the other side of the room next to Lourdes. Why can't I pet him? I asked Lourdes. Because Nate says 3 hours ago, this dog lived on the street with a homeless man, she answered quickly. It's disgusting. She's not disgusting, she's beautiful, said Via, kissing the dog on her forehead. In my country, dogs stay outside, said Lourdes. He's so cute, Augie said. It's a she, Via said quickly, nudging Augie. Be careful, Augie, said Isabel. Don't let her lick you in the face. But the dog was already licking Augie all over his face. The vet said she's perfectly healthy, guys, Nate said to both Isabel and Lourdes. Nate, she was living on the street, Isabel answered quickly. Who knows what she's carrying? The vet gave her all her shots, a tick bath, checked for worms, answered Nate. This puppy's got a clean bill of health. That is not a puppy, Nate, Isabel pointed out. That was true. The dog was definitely not a puppy. She wasn't little or soft and round like puppies usually are. She was skinny and pointy and wild-eyed, and she had this crazy long black tongue kind of pouring out the side of her mouth. And she wasn't a small dog either. She was the same size as my grandmother's Labradoodle. Okay, said Nate. Well, she's puppy-like. What kind of dog is she? Asked Augie. The vet thinks a yellow lab mix, answered Nate. Maybe some chow? More like a pit bull, said Isabel. Did he at least tell you how old she is? Nate shrugged. He couldn't tell for sure, he answered. 2 or 3. Usually they judge from the teeth, but hers are in bad shape because, she's probably been eating junk food all her life. Garbage and dead rats, Lourdes said like it was for sure. Oh, God, Isabel muttered, rubbing her hand over her face. Her breath does smell pretty bad, said Via, waving her hand in front of her nose. Isabel, said Nate, looking up at her, she was destined for us. Wait, you mean we're keeping her? Via said excitedly, her eyes opening really wide. I thought we were just babysitting her until we could find her a home. I think we should be her home, said Nate. Really, Daddy? Cried Augie. Nate smiled and pointed his chin at Isabel. But it's up to Mommy, guys, he said. Are you kidding me, Nate? Cried Isabel as Via and Augie ran over to her and started pleading with her, putting their hands together like they were praying in church. Please, 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 they kept saying over and over again. Pretty please, pretty please, 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 please. I can't believe you're doing this to me, Nate, said Isabel, shaking her head. Like our lives aren't complicated enough. Nate smiled and looked down at the dog, who was looking at him. Look at her, honey. She was starving and cold. The homeless guy offered to sell her to me for $10. What was I going to do, say no? Yes, said Lourdes. Very easy to do. It's good karma to save a dog's life, answered Nate. Don't do it, Isabel, said Lourdes. Dogs are dirty and smelly, and they have germs, and you know who will end up walking her all the time and picking up all the poo-poo? She pointed at Isabel. That's not true, Mommy, said Via. I promise I'll walk her every day. Me too, Mommy, said Augie. We'll take care of her completely, continued Via. We'll feed her. We'll do everything. Everything, added Augie. Please, 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 Mommy. Please, 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 Mommy, Via said at the same time. Isabel was rubbing her forehead with her fingers like she had a headache. Finally, she looked at Nate and shrugged. I think this is crazy, but okay, fine. Really? Shrieked Via, hugging Isabel tightly. Thank you, Mommy. Thank you so much. I promise we'll take care of her. Thank you, Mommy, repeated Augie, hugging Isabel. Yay, thank you, Isabel, said Nate, clapping the dog's two front paws together. Can I please pet her now? I said to Lourdes, pulling away from her grip before she could stop me again. I slid over between Auggie and Via. Nate put the dog down on the rug then, and she literally turned over onto her back so that we could all scratch her tummy. She closed her eyes like she was smiling, her long black tongue hanging from the side of her mouth onto the rug. That's exactly how I found her today, Nate pointed out. I've never seen a longer tongue in my life, said Isabel, crouching down next to us. She still hadn't pet the dog yet, though. She looks like the Tasmanian devil. I think she's beautiful, said Via. What's her name? What do you want to name her? Asked Nate. I think we should name her Daisy, answered Via without any hesitation at all. She's yellow like a daisy. That's a nice name, said Isabel, who started petting the dog. Then again, she looks a little like a lion. We could call her Elsa. I know what we should name her, I said, nudging Auggie. You should call her Darth Maul. That is the stupidest name in the world for a dog, Via answered, disgusted. I ignored her. Do you get it, Auggie? Darth Maul. Get it? Because dogs maul. Ha ha, Auggie said. That's so funny. Darth Maul. We're not calling her that, Via said snottily to the two of us. Hi, Darth Maul, Auggie said to the dog, kissing her on her pink nose. We can call her Darth for short. Via looked at Nate. Daddy, we're not calling her that. I think it's kind of a fun name, Nate answered, shrugging. Mommy, Via said angrily, turning to Isabel. I agree with Via, said Isabel. I don't think we should use the word maul for a dog, especially one that looks like this one. Then we'll just name her Darth, Auggie insisted. That's idiotic, said Via. I think since Mommy's letting us keep the dog, answered Nate, she should be the one who decides what to name her. Can we call her Daisy, Mommy? Asked Via. Can we call her Darth Maul? Asked Auggie. Isabel gave Nate a look. You really are killing me, Nate. Nate laughed, and that was how we ended up calling her Darth Daisy. 7:11 a.m. How did she die? I asked Mom. Was she hit by a car? No, she stroked my arm. She was old, sweetie. It was her time. She wasn't that old. She was sick. What, so they put her to sleep? I asked, incensed. How could they do that? Sweetie, she was in pain, she answered. They didn't want her to suffer. Isabel said that she died very peacefully in Nate's arms. I tried to picture what that would look like, Daisy dying in Nate's arms. I wondered if Auggie had been there too. As if that family hasn't been through enough already, Mom added. I didn't say anything. I just blinked and looked up at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling. Some of them were coming unstuck, hanging on by just 1 or 2 points. A few had fallen down on me like little pointy raindrops. You never fixed the stars, by the way, I said without thinking. She had no idea what I was talking about. What? You said you were going to glue them back on, I said, pointing to the ceiling. They keep falling down on me. She looked up. Oh, right, she said, nodding. I think she hadn't expected the conversation about Daisy to be over so quickly, but I didn't want to talk about it anymore. She got up on top of my bed, took one of the lightsabers leaning on my bookcase, and tried to jam one of the larger stars back into place with the end of the lightsaber. They need to be glued, Lisa, I said, just as the plastic star fell down on her head. Right, she answered, picking the star out of her hair. She jumped down off my bed. Can you not call me Lisa, please? Okay, Lisa, I answered. She rolled her eyes and pointed the lightsaber at me like she was going to jab me. Thanks for waking me up with really bad news, by the way, I said sarcastically. Hey, you're the one who asked me about it, she answered, putting the lightsaber back. I was going to wait until this afternoon to tell you. Why? I'm not a baby, Lisa, I answered. I mean, sure, I do love Daisy, but it's not like she was my dog. It's not like I even see her anymore. I thought you'd be really upset, she answered. I am, I said. I'm just not going to start crying or anything. Okay, she answered, nodding and looking at me. What? I said impatiently. Nothing, she answered. You're right. You're not a baby. She looked at the plastic star that was still stuck on her thumb and then, without saying anything else, leaned down and stuck it on my forehead. You should call Auggie this afternoon, by the way. Why? Why? She raised her eyebrows. To tell him how sorry you are about Daisy, to pay your condolences because he's your best friend. Oh, right, I mumbled, nodding. Oh, right, she repeated. Okay, Lisa, I get it, I said. Grumpity grump grump, she said on her way out. You have 3 minutes, Chris, then you've got to get up. I'll turn on the shower for you. Close the door behind you, I called out after her. Please, she yelled from the hallway. Close the door behind you, please, I groaned. She slammed the door shut. She could be so annoying sometimes. I picked the star off my forehead and looked at it. Mom had put those stars on the ceiling when we first moved in. That was back when she was trying to do everything she could to get me to like our new house in Bridgeport. She had even promised that we would get a dog after we got settled in, but we never got a dog. We got a hamster. But that's hardly a dog. That's not even 1/4 of a dog. A hamster is basically just a warm potato with fur. I mean, it moves and it's cute and all, but don't let anyone try to fool you that it's the same as a dog. I called my hamster Luke, but she's no Daisy. Poor Daisy. It was hard to believe she was gone, but I didn't want to think about her now. I started thinking of all the things I had to do this afternoon. Band practice right after school, study for the math test tomorrow, start my book report for Friday, play some Halo, maybe catch up on The Amazing Race tonight. I flicked the plastic star in the air and watched it spin across the room. It landed on the edge of my rug by the door. Lots of stuff to do. It was going to be a long day, but even as I was ticking off all the things I had to do today, I knew calling Auggie wasn't going to be one of them. Friendships. I don't remember exactly when Zach and Alex stopped hanging out with me and Auggie. I think it was about the time we started kindergarten. Before that, we all used to see each other almost every day. Our moms would usually bring us over to Auggie's house since there were a lot of times when he couldn't go out because he was sick. Not a contagious kind of sick or anything, but the kind where he couldn't go outside. But we liked going to his house. His parents had turned their basement into a giant playroom, so basically it was like a toy store down there. Board games, train sets, air hockey, and foosball tables, even a mini trampoline in the back. Zach and Alex and Auggie and I would literally spend hours running around down there, having all-day lightsaber duels and hot ball races. We would have balloon wars, we would pile cardboard bricks into giant mountains and play avalanche. Our moms called us the Four Musketeers since we did everything together, and even after all the moms, except Isabel, went back to work, our babysitters got us together every day. They would take us on day trips to the Bronx Zoo or to see the pirate ships at the South Street Seaport. We'd have picnics in the park. We even went all the way down to Coney Island a few times. But once we started kindergarten, Zach and Alex started having playdates with other kids. They went to a different school than I did since they lived on the other side of the park, so we didn't see them as much anymore. Auggie and I would bump into them in the park sometimes, Zach and Alex, hanging out with their new buddies, and we tried hanging out with them a couple of times, but their new friends didn't seem to like us. Okay, that's not exactly true. Their new friends didn't like Auggie. I know for a fact because Zach told me this. I remember telling this to my mom, and she explained that some kids might feel uncomfortable around Auggie because of the way he looks. That's how she put it, uncomfortable. That's not how Zach and Alex had put it, though. They used the word scared. But I knew that Zach and Alex weren't uncomfortable or scared of Auggie, so I didn't understand why they stopped hanging out with us. I mean, I had new friends from my school too, but I didn't stop hanging out with Auggie. Then again, I never hung out with Auggie and my new friends together because, well, mixing friends can be a weird thing even under the best of circumstances. I guess the truth is I didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable or scared either. Auggie had his own group of friends too, by the way. There were kids who belonged to an organization for kids with craniofacial differences, which is what Auggie has. Every year, all the kids and their families hang out together at Disneyland or some other fun place like that. Auggie loved going on these trips. He'd made friends all over the country, but these friends didn't live near us, so he hardly ever got to hang out with them. I did meet one of his friends once, though, a kid named Hudson. He had a different syndrome than Auggie has. His eyes were spaced very far apart, and they kind of bulged out a little bit. He and his parents were staying with Augie's family for a couple of days while they were in the city meeting with doctors at Augie's hospital. Hudson was the same age as me and Auggie. He was really into Pokemon, I remember. Anyway, I had an okay time playing with him and Auggie that day, though Pokemon had never really been my thing. But then we all went to dinner together, and that's when things got bad for me. I can't believe how much we got stared at. Like usually when it was just me and Auggie, people would look at him and not even notice me. I was used to that. But with Hudson there, for some reason, it was just so much worse. People would look at Auggie first, and then they'd look at Hudson, and then they'd automatically look at me like they were wondering what was wrong with me too. I saw one teenager staring at me like he was trying to figure out what was out of place on my face. It was so annoying. It made me want to scream. I couldn't wait to go home. The next day, since I knew Hudson was still going to be there, I asked Lourdes if I could have a play date over at Zach's house after school instead of going to Auggie's house. It's not that I didn't like Hudson, because I did, but I wasn't into Pokemon, and I definitely didn't want to get stared at again if we all went out somewhere. I ended up having lots of fun at Zach's house. Alex came over, and the three of us played Foursquare in front of his stoop. It really felt like old times again, except for the fact that Auggie wasn't there with us. But it was nice. No one stared at us. No one felt uncomfortable. No one got scared. Hanging out with Zach and Alex was just easy. That's when I realized why they didn't hang out with us anymore. Being friends with Auggie could be hard sometimes. Luckily, Auggie never asked why I didn't come over to his house that day. I was glad about that. I didn't know how to tell him that being friends with him could be hard for me sometimes, too. 8:26 a.m. I don't know why, but it's almost impossible for me to get to school on time. Honestly, I don't know why. Every day it's the same thing. I sleep through my alarm, mom or dad wakes me up, whether I take a shower or not, whether I have a big breakfast or a Pop-Tart. We end up scrambling before we leave, mom or dad yelling at me to hurry up and get my coat, hurry up and tie my shoelaces. And even in those rare moments when we do get out the door on time, I'll forget something, so we end up turning back anyway. Sometimes it's my homework folder I forget, sometimes it's my trombone. I don't know why, I really don't. It's just the way that it is. Whether I'm sleeping at my mom's house or my dad's house, I'm always running late. Today I took a quick shower, got dressed super fast, popped my Pop-Tart, and managed to get out the door on time. It wasn't until we had driven the 15 minutes it takes to get to school and had pulled into the school parking lot that I realized I had forgotten my science paper, my gym shorts, and my trombone. A new record for forgetting things. "You're kidding, right?" said Mom when I told her. She was looking at me in the rearview mirror. "No," I said, biting my nails nervously. "Can we go back?" "Chris, you're already running late. In this rain, it'll take 40 minutes by the time we got home and back. No, you go to class, and I'll write you a note or something." "I can't show up without my science paper," I argued. "I have science first period." "You should have thought of that before you left the house this morning," she answered. "Now come on, get out or you'll be late on top of everything. Look, even the school buses are leaving." She pointed to where the school buses had started driving out of the parking lot. "Lisa," I said, panicked. "What, Chris?" she shot back. "What do you want me to do? I can't teleport." "Can't you go home and get them for me?" She passed her fingers through her hair, which had gotten wet from the rain. "How many times have I told you to pack up your stuff the night before so you don't forget anything, huh?" "Lisa!" "Fine," she said. "Just go to class, and I'll bring you your stuff. Now go, Chris." "But you have to hurry." "Go!" She turned around and gave me that look she gives me sometimes when her eyeballs get super big and she kind of looks like an angry bird. "Get out of the car and go to school already." "Fine," I said. I stomped out of the car. It had started raining harder, and of course I didn't have an umbrella. She lowered the driver's side window. "Be careful walking to the sidewalk." "Trombone, science paper, gym shorts," I said to her, counting on my fingers. "Careful where you're walking," she said, nodding. "This is a parking lot, Chris." "Mrs. Castor will deduct 5 points off my grade if I don't hand my paper in by the end of first period," I answered. "You have to be back before first period ends." "I know, Chris," she answered quickly. "Now walk to the sidewalk, sweetie." "Trombone, science paper, gym shorts," I said, walking back toward the sidewalk. "Watch where you're walking, Chris," she shrieked just as the bike swerved around to avoid hitting me. "Sorry," I said to the bicyclist, who had a baby bundled up in the front bike carrier. The guy shook his head and pedaled away. "Chris, you have to watch where you're going," Mom screamed. "Will you stop yelling?" I yelled. She took a deep breath and rubbed her forehead. "Walk to the sidewalk, please," she said through gritted teeth. I turned around, looked both ways in an exaggerated way, and crossed the parking lot to the path leading to the school entrance. By now, the last of the school buses was pulling out of the parking lot. "Happy now?" I said when I reached the sidewalk. I could hear her sighing from 20 feet away. "I'll leave your stuff at the front desk in the main office," she answered, turning on the ignition and looking behind her as she started slowly backing out of the parking space. "Bye, honey. Have a nice—" "Wait!" I ran over to the car while it was still moving. The car screeched to a stop. "Chris! I forgot my backpack," I said, opening the car door to get the backpack that I had left in the back seat. I could see her shaking her head out of the corner of my eye. I closed the door, looked both ways in a super obvious way again, and sprinted back toward the sidewalk. By now, the rain was coming down really hard. I pulled my hood over my head. "Trombone, science paper, gym shorts," I shouted, not looking back at her. I started jogging up the sidewalk to the school entrance. "Love you," I heard her call out. "Bye, Lisa." I made it inside just before the first bell rang. 9:14 a.m. I kept looking at the clock all through science class. Then about 10 minutes before the bell, I asked for the bathroom pass. I ran over to the main office as fast as I could and asked Miss Dennis, the nice old lady behind the main desk, for the stuff my mother had dropped off. Sorry, Christopher, she said, your mother hasn't dropped anything off. What? I said. Was she supposed to come at a certain time? She asked, looking at her watch. I've been here all morning. I'm sure I haven't missed her. She must have seen the expression on my face because she waved me to come to the other side of her desk. She pointed to the phone. Why don't you give her a call, honey? I called Mom's cell phone and got her voicemail. Hi, Mom, it's me and, you're not here, and I looked at the big clock on the wall, it's 9:14. I'm totally screwed if you don't show up in the next 10 minutes, so, yeah, thanks a lot, Lisa. I hung up. I'm sure she'll be here any minute now, said Miss Dennis. There's a lot of traffic on the highway because of all the construction, and it's really pouring outside now. Yeah, I nodded and headed back to class. At first, I thought maybe I'd gotten lucky. Mrs. Castor didn't mention anything about the rest of the paper for the rest of the class. Then, just as the bell rang, she reminded us to drop off our science papers at her desk on the way out. I waited until everyone else had left and walked over to her at the whiteboard. Mrs. Castor? I said. Yes, Christopher? Yeah, sorry, but I left my science paper at home this morning, she continued, erasing the whiteboard. My mom's bringing it to school, but she got caught in the rain, I said. I don't know why, but when I talk to teachers and get a little nervous, my voice goes up at the end of every sentence. That's the 4th time this semester you've forgotten an assignment, Christopher, she said. I know, I answered. Then I raised my shoulders and smiled. But I didn't know you knew. Ha! She didn't even crack a smile at my attempt at humor. I just meant I didn't know you were keeping track, I started to say. It's 5 points off, Chris, she said. Even if I get it to you next period? I know I sounded whiny at this point. Rules are rules. So unfair, I muttered under my breath, shaking my head. The second bell rang, and I ran to my next class before she could respond. 10:05 a.m. Mr. Wren, my music teacher, was just as annoyed at me for forgetting my trombone as Mrs. Castor had been about my science paper. For one thing, I had told Mr. Wren that Katie McAnn, the first trombonist, could take my trombone home today to practice her solo for the spring concert on Wednesday night. Katie's trombone was getting repaired, and the only other spare trombone was so banged up you couldn't even push the slide past 4th position. So not only was Mr. Wren angry, but Katie was too. And Katie is the kind of girl you don't want getting mad at you. She's a head taller than everyone else, and she gives really scary, dirty looks to people she's mad at. Anyway, I told Katie that my mom was on her way back to school with my trombone, so she didn't give me the dirty look right away. Mr. Wren gave her the dented trombone to use during class, so she didn't even have to sit out of music. When people forget their instruments, Mr. Wren usually makes them sit quietly off to the side and watch the orchestra rehearse. You're not allowed to read anything or do homework. You just have to sit and listen to the orchestra rehearse. Not exactly the most thrilling experience in the world. I, of course, did have to sit music out today since there was no trombone left for me to play. During break, I ran over to the main office to pick up the stuff Mom should have dropped off by now, but she still hadn't shown up. I'm sure she just got stuck in traffic, offered Mrs. Dennis. I shook my head. No, I think I know what happened, I answered grumpily. It had occurred to me while I was watching the band rehearse. Isabel. Duh, of course, Daisy just died. Something else must have happened, maybe something to do with Auggie, and Isabel called Mom. And Mom, like she always does, dropped whatever she was doing to go help the Pullmans. For all I knew, she was probably at the Pullman house right now. I bet she'd been on her way back to school with my trombone, science paper, and gym shorts in the back seat of the car when Isabel called, and bam, Mom completely forgot about me. Duh, of course that's what happened. It wouldn't be the first time either. You want to call her again? Said Miss Dennis sweetly, handing me the phone. No thanks, I mumbled. Katie came over to me when I got back to music class. Where's the trombone? She said. Her eyebrows were practically touching in the middle of her forehead. You said your mom was bringing it. She's stuck in traffic, I said apologetically. She'll have it when she picks me up from school today, though. I guess Katie made me as nervous as teachers did. Can you meet me after school at 5:30? Why would I wait around until 5:30? She answered, making a clucking sound with her tongue. She gave me the same look she gave me when I accidentally emptied my spit valve in her Dixie cup a few weeks ago. Gee, thanks, Chris. Now I'm going to totally mess up my solo at the spring concert, and it's totally going to be your fault. It's not my fault, I said. My mom was supposed to bring me my stuff. You're such a moron, she mumbled. No, you are, was my brilliant comeback. Your ears stick out. She made both her hands into little fists and walked away with her arms straight at her sides. Ugh, I answered, rolling my eyes. And for the rest of class, she shot me the dirtiest looks you can imagine over her music stand. If looks really could kill, Katie McCann would be a serial murderer. All of this could have been avoided if Mom hadn't abandoned me today. I was so mad at her for that. Boy, was she going to be sorry tonight. I could picture it already. How she would pick me up after school and be all, "I'm so sorry, honey. I had to drive over to the Pullmans because they needed help with yada, yada, yada." And I'd be like, "Yada, yada, yada." And she'd be like, "Come on, honey. You know they need our help sometimes. Yada, yada, yada." Last chapter. Space. When Augie turned 5, someone gave him an astronaut helmet as a birthday present. I don't remember who, but Augie started wearing that helmet all the time. Everywhere. Every day. I know people thought it was because he wanted to cover his face, and maybe part of it was that, but I think it was more because Augie really loved outer space. Stars and planets, black holes, anything to do with the Apollo missions. He started telling everyone he was going to be an astronaut when he grew up. In the beginning, I didn't get why he was so obsessed with this stuff, but then one weekend, our moms took us to the planetarium at the Natural History Museum, and that's when I got sucked into it too. That was the beginning of what we called our space phase. Augie and I had gone through a lot of phases by then. Zuby plushies, pop bop bots, dinosaurs, ninjas, Power Rangers, I'm embarrassed to say. But until then, nothing had been as intense as our space phase. We watched every DVD we could find about the universe. Space videos, picture books about the Milky Way, making 3D solar systems, building model rocket ships. We would spend hours playing pretend games about missions to deep space or landing on Pluto. That became our favorite planet to travel to. Pluto was our Tatooine. We were still deep into our space phase when my 6th birthday rolled around, so my parents decided to have my party at the planetarium. Augie and I were so excited. The new space show had just come out and we hadn't seen it yet. I invited my entire 1st grade class, and Zach and Alex, of course. I even invited Via, but she said she couldn't come because she had a different party to go to that same day. But then, the morning of my birthday, Isabel called Mom and told her that she and Nate had to take Augie to the hospital. He had woken up with a high fever and his eyelids were swollen shut. A few days before, he had a minor surgery to correct a previous surgery to make his lower eyelids less droopy, and now it had become infected, so Augie had to go to the hospital instead of going to my 6th birthday party. I was so bummed. But I got even more bummed when Mom told me that Isabel had asked her if she would be able to drop Via off at the other birthday party before going to my party. Before even checking with me first, Mom had said, "Yes, of course, whatever we can do to help," even though that meant that she might end up being a little late to my birthday party. "But why can't Nate drop Via off at the other party?" I asked Mom. "Because he's driving Augie to the hospital along with Isabel," Mom answered. "It's not a big deal, Chris. I'll take Via in a taxi and then hop on a train." "But can't somebody else take Via? Why does it have to be you?" "Isabel doesn't have time to start calling other moms, Chris, so if we don't take Via, she'll have to go with them to the hospital. Poor Via is always missing out." "Mommy," I interrupted, "I don't care about Via. I don't want you to be late to my birthday party." "Chris, what do you want me to say?" Mom answered. "There are friends. Isabel is my friend, and just like Augie is your good friend. And when good friends need us, we do what we can to help them, right? We can't just be friends when it's convenient. Good friendships are worth a little extra effort." When I didn't say anything, she kissed my hand. "I promise I'll only be a few minutes late," she said. But she wasn't just a few minutes late. She ended up being more than a half an hour late. "I'm so sorry, honey. The A train was out of service. No taxis anywhere. So sorry." I knew she felt terrible, but I was so angry. I remember even Dad was annoyed. She was so late, she even missed the space show.